Yo, 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 yo. Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about identifying and representing functions. We're starting module 6. So here are your key term definitions that you need to get down. And the big one that we're really going to talk about today is function. Okay. So a function is something that assigns exactly one output to each input. So we've talked about input outputs before. Those are your x and y values into an equation. Well, if it's a function, what makes something a function or that equation, that table a function, we're going to look at tables, is to make that table a function, each x has to be assigned to exactly one y value. So each input has to be assigned to exactly one output because that means that it has to follow a specific rule. So let's just start looking at examples so you can see what I'm talking about. So for here, I have inputs and outputs. I have x's and I have y's. Okay, and we're going to determine if this is a function or not. So what we do is we look at all the x values or all the inputs, and we want to see, do these inputs just go to one different output? So like, does one go to just one thing? So if I input a 1, out comes a 2. So if I put in a 1, out comes a 2. So I put in a 1 into the function that follows this rule, and out comes a 2. That's okay. That's good. If I put in a 3 and out comes an 8, that's fine. If I put in a 7 and out comes a 6, that's good. So what happens is every time I put in a 3, out comes an 8. Every time I put in a 7, out comes a 6. So because of that, yes, this is a function. Now let me show you something that would make this not a function. What would make this not a function is if I had a second arrow coming off the 1. So right now, every time I input a 1, out comes a 2. But if I also have an arrow that says 1 also goes to 6, as soon as I draw this arrow in here, this is no longer a function. Because if it's following a rule, every single time I input the 1, out should come a 2. If I input a 1 again and out comes a 6, that means it's not following the same rule both times. So therefore, it is not a function. So if I input that arrow, that's what makes it not a function. So if I'm looking at this one, here's my input, here's my output. I'm looking at, does my input only go to one number? Well, 0 only goes to 1, but 2 goes to 4 and to 5. So that means this is not a function. And the reason why is this 2, if the first time I put the 2, it goes into 4, and the second time I input a 2, it goes to 5. That means it's following a different rule. So with functions, they always have to follow the same rule each and every single time. If the input goes to 2 different things, it's not following the same rule. So this is one way to look at functions. Another way is just an input-output table, which is what we've been looking at for a while now. I have input-output tables are x's and y's. So what I want to look to see is every time I put in a certain number will outcome the same number. Well, if I look at all my inputs, I have 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. I don't have any numbers being repeated, so this is automatically a function. Okay, this is a function. So yes, this is automatically a function because that means I didn't input 5 twice, so therefore it can't not be a function. So this is a function. Now, real quick though, look at this. So let's say I did have another 5 on here. Let's say 5 was right here. Then I have to look at, well, what's the output for 5? So if 5 was there, so that means I input 5 twice. If 7 was my output, this is still a function because every time I input 5, I still went to the same output of 7. That's okay. Okay, because that means it's following the same rule. I input a 5, out comes a 7. Input a 5 again, out came a 7 again. This would still be a function. So as soon as I see the same input twice, I have to look at, are their outputs the exact same? Because if they are, that means they followed the same equation. If this 5 though was maybe like now went to 10, now this would make it not a function because I input 5 and got a 7, input 5 and got a 10. Okay, try part B on your own. So pause this real quick and try the second one and see if you can determine if this is a function or not a function. Okay, so if I look here, I've got 1 twice on my input. So now I've got to look at, are the outputs the same? If the outputs are the same, it's still fine. Okay, if the outputs are not the same, not a function. Well, the outputs are 10 and 4, so that means not a function. Okay. Now you're gonna have to look at a graph and determine if it's a function or not. And a graph, guys, it's actually something that I'm gonna show you a little trick. It makes it really easy because it's still the same rule. Okay, so for a graph, we're still following the same rule where every input has to have exactly one output. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do what's called a vertical line test. Okay, so here I have a vertical line. Your guys' vertical line that you get to use on a piece of paper is just your pencil. Pencils make a straight line. So for a graph, because X values are your input, the Y values are your output. So that means that if I have like X is 1, so here's X is 1, that means I can only have one Y value on X is 1. Okay, because if I have a second Y value on X is 1, that means it's not following an equation or the same rule. So what we do is the trick is if you take this vertical line, pretend like this line is your pencil and you're going over the graph. And if I just take this vertical line and I go across my graph, I'm looking to see, does this graph have 2 points on this vertical line? As soon as I see a second point on this vertical line, it's not a function. So it's good, good, good. And if I stop right here, do you guys see how both of these points, this point and this point right here, both cross this vertical line? So because of that, not a function. So you can take your pencil across the graph and go straight up and down on the graph. And like right now it's all okay, all okay, all okay. This one's only touching it once, but this one touching it twice, not a function. So the X values, that means this X value, when I put in X is 2, out came 70, out came 85, just like in the table. The input was 2, the output was 2 different outputs, not a function. And this vertical line test is just a little trick to make it really easy on a graph. You just go through, and if it ever hits the line twice, it's not a function. Okay, do 7 and 8 on your own, please. So 7 and 8 on your own. Okay, so number seven, let's see here. We don't have any repeats, right? There's no input that repeats itself. So this is a function. Yes, it is a function. Every input has its own output. Whoa, I don't know what happened there. So this would be a function. For this one right here, so I'm going to look at, let's see, any repeats. I have 8s. So I'm going to look, are the outputs the same? Well, 21 and 34 are not the same numbers, so not a function. Okay, that's it, guys. So things to remember is, let's put vertical line test with your pencil. On a graph. Okay, here's your independent practice. See how you do. If you have any questions, let me know. Whoa, Greedy is out.